Okay, hello everybody. Are you still with me? Shall I just go and take a nap this afternoon? So at least it crashed before. I guess my computer decided to update. I didn't realize it needed some updates, so maybe that was the reason why. Anyway, I'm back. Today I'm going to just carry on where we left off. So thanks for coming if you've been here and you've stayed here for me. We are going to be looking at the ArtPlay Ambages Collection, which of course includes these 6 products, including the bonus. And then we also have 4 additional companion sets. So my plan is to create 3 layouts using this collection. If you'd like further information about this collection, then just head over to the blog at annaaspinusdesigns.com. When I go ahead and I post this video, I will make sure that I put a link down in that area so that you can access the information on those. But I am going to use this collection, and I thought I might start off with the Artsy template, just because we've had a bit of a interrupted start so far to this session. But I am glad that it decided to crash at the beginning and not at the end. Let's hope that we've had all of our crashes for today. Touch wood. I'm going to touch some wood on the table here. Okay, so this is the Artsy Layered Template. So these are kind of fun because they are sort of blueprints for creating a standard design. So typically you would go and you would select a background for your Artsy template. And so that's located in the ArtPlay palette. So we have a bunch of different paperies here. So we have the Artsy papers, and then we have the choice of all of these solid papers. So I would just pick one of these at this point. Let's go and take a look and see. I'm probably going to pick something with contrast. So maybe not blue or green, maybe go with this white option here. So I'm literally going to drag it from its location and just drop it directly onto the background layer in the layers panel. So it's always a good idea to select the layer below which you want to introduce the paper. And it looks like some of you are still here, so thanks for being here. Thanks for being patient. This happens sometimes. It's part of the joys of live online teaching. It used to upset me, but now I just kind of go with the flow and hope that you guys wait for me. So anyway, we have an opportunity here to blend a photo. We also have these small frames here. You can keep those frames in position, or you might choose to move them around. Might be that you want to maybe change the location of some of these files. You also may want to duplicate the layer too. So if you have more than 2 photos, then maybe you want to add additional images in there. You could duplicate. I kind of like the effect of double frames. So that's kind of a fun way to stack the frames. You might also want to try a different formation. So have them more in a column style format as opposed to a line across the bottom here. So lots of different options. You could also create a sort of quad of these frames. So if I wanted to bring this down and then maybe add this here and then maybe add another one over here, then we could play around with adding that into the mix as well. And another way you could change this up is to rotate these frames. So you could rotate them by 90 degrees and have them like this. So that's kind of a fun format too. I don't know if you're like me, but I tend to, for some reason, take a lot of my photos in portrait format. Now, when you change the orientation of your photos, you're going to probably want to adjust that shadow a little bit. So maybe nudge that shadow down, rotate it, and just sort of get it into a form that is sort of pleasing to your eye. So I just tend to kind of move things around until I get something that I like. So I want that one maybe, and this one. So maybe we move these across like that. I want to see this area here. So it's just sort of nudging them around. So maybe we'll go with that. You can also go to Edit, Transform, and then you can flip vertical too. And so that sometimes can help with the shadow, as well as going to Edit, Transform, and flipping horizontal. So you can kind of change the format of those frames like that. So one of the ways I like to use these templates is with photo blends clipping masks. And so what I would do here is select the paper layer or the transfer layer, the top of the transfer layer. So that's sort of above the transfer layers, but below all of the element layers. Looks like we've got quite a number of different layers here. So maybe just below the frames would be a good place to place your cursor in the layers panel. And then I'm going to navigate to our photo blends clipping masks. And so these are located in 2 different folders, mainly just to make the downloads a little easier for you. They tend to be quite large files. And then you're just going to go in and select a photo blends that's going to fit with your design. So I think this one's going to work pretty well. I forget exactly which one goes with which. If you get the bonus collection, then it does actually have a number of different layouts to give you an idea. It kind of guides you in which photo blends coordinate with which papers. And the same with the elements as well. So I'm just going to drag this in, and this looks like it fits quite well. Just like that. And drag it into the background. So you can see it's quite easy to bring a layout like this together. And I'm going to go ahead and go to layer group layers just to keep those nice and grouped. And I think we'll go ahead and we'll group these frames too. So let's go to layer group layers. And then we want to go inside. It's always a good idea to name your groups so that then you know what is what, and you're able to access your layers quickly. So I'm going to go into this photo blends layer. It looks like it's already open. Oh, it's not. And I'm going to select the photo mask because we want to clip a photo to the photo mask. And Mikey's just arrived. You missed all the fun, Mikey. All of my computer crashes and stuff. So now I am going to go, and I've got to navigate to my folder, my photos. I did have some photos selected that I was going to use. I've been pretty bad about taking photos lately. I think I'm kind of a little bit at a loss what to do without Ella, and life just seems to have changed so drastically around here. We seem to have gone from 2 kids to no kids, as Luke has found his newfound freedom in driving. So I'm going to go back to September of 2019. This was the last time my parents came out to visit, and if you know, and you've been around here for a while, you'll know that my parents have, they come out every September, except for the last 2 years. So this will be the second time that I won't have seen them, but I thought it might be fun to go back and revisit some of the photos with them. So I am looking really for a landscape style photo. This one looks like it's from, Castle Rock, which is a town near us. See, most of my photos are in portrait format, so there's a bunch of them down here. I think I took these in a sort of a I took these actually with my camera, my real camera, my Canon, and I didn't have it in automatic mode. So there's a lot of sort of blown out images because clearly I'm out of practice in doing that. And look how young Luke looks. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab a random picture. I think I'm going to take this one that's fairly, here we go, let's go with this one. So I'm going to drag this in, and I'm going to place it on top. So none of this is scripted. I basically am flying by the seat of my pants, and it looks like actually this is a raw file. So that's why it opened that way. So I've not planned any of this other than the fact that maybe I would use these images. So I'm placing it above the mask layer, and I'm going to layer create clipping mask. And then from here I can go ahead and I can resize this image if I want to. I can rotate it slightly. I do kind of like how that worked out though. I like the texture around the edges, and I like the yellow that brings in the yellow in the design. I want to lighten this dark area up a little bit though, so I'm going to go to image adjustments, shadow and highlights, and that's going to give me the option to change the shadow lever and the highlight lever, so I can make the sky a little darker and I can make the shadows a little lighter. And then to edit, I like to use blending modes. So I'm going to duplicate that layer by dragging it down to the new layer icon in Photoshop Elements that's located at the top of your panel. And then I like to go to, I don't know if I need any more lightness with screen, although I do like that color dodge. So maybe I will go ahead and apply that layer as a color dodge and then duplicate that layer again. And then maybe this time go with overlay, color burn. I think I like the overlay. So I like how that's kind of turning out. Like I said, completely unscripted. I think I want to change just the ordering of some of these frames. So maybe bring that up a little bit and maybe rotate it slightly. And then let's bring this one around. So I find that I will kind of create a page like this, and then I'll start playing around as I start adding elements and see how it goes. Then that's when I'll start moving things around as I add the pieces to it. And so to add the images inside the frames, it's pretty much the same sort of scenario. You're going to select the images, see if I can find a decent one. So let's drag this one in, and sometimes you can drag it directly onto your canvas if it's not a raw file. It's a raw file, so I'm just going to open that and it's going to drag right in. There we go. So we can add these guys in here. Go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask, and it's quite bright because I was in manual mode. So I can go to my levels and I can add in some darker tones. I can add in some more shadows. I can even go to my hue and saturation and bring down the saturation slightly, just to kind of improve the look of that layout. And then you'll notice that I brought just one photo in. It is possible to bring in multiple photos. So maybe I will bring, there's one of the cable car here. There's one of the trees, and then I wonder if I have one of my parents. I think my parents had left us at this point, so maybe this one here of all of us. So I'm going to drag all three of those. I'm holding down the Control or the Command key on my keyboard to select all of those images, and these are all JPEGs, of course, go figure. So I'm going to select each of these mask layers, drag the photo over, go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask, and then resize. They're quite large, these photos. So you can do this with the transform controls. So with that move tool selected, then you can kind of access those, get everybody into the picture. And then another way I like to edit too is using the curves. So this isn't available in Photoshop Elements, just Photoshop. If you're in Photoshop, you could use the curves. It's just this diagonal line here, and you draw the line up to increase the brightness and down to increase the contrast. And then because my other photos are quite saturated, I'm going to go to saturation, and I'm just going to increase the saturation of that and just brighten it up a little bit. If you are working in Adobe Photoshop Elements, then you could go to Image Adjustment Levels, and that's going to give you a similar sort of effect. You're just going to have to move a couple of levers instead of just having that curve. So we'll add this one in here, and then resize it. Go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask. And again, I could go to my hue and saturation if I wanted to and increase the saturation. Add a bit more color into the mix there. And then our last photo are these trees. I think I may have, there we go. Thought I almost lost that image off the edge of the canvas there for a moment. You can rotate it, go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask, and then I can use the levels or the curves, whichever. I can sort of use them interchangeably, just depending on how I feel at the time. I think that they're both just as valid as one another. So I might just duplicate this layer and see if I can make it just a tad darker, and then maybe adjust the opacity. So lots of different ways to edit your photos there. I'm going to replace the title here. You can see we've got a title placement, so I delete that. I could type in my own title, but I have some really fun titles in my digital art supplies. If I go over to my Word Art Mix, then we've got lots of different options here. So I like to, there's path, so that would work really well. going to add this into the background here, and that's going to create a nice foundation for my title, add some visual interest to the design. And then I'm going to find any of these would be good. So how about Made for Journeys, and then maybe Stay. I like to kind of have 3 different types of word art. So these word art mixes are designed to sort of be put together. I love how the wood coordinates really well with the trees. And then we can add our Made for Journeys here. Now, I was asked recently about whether I add drop shadow layer styles to my titles, and typically I don't unless you can't see them very well. So I think in this case it's okay. If I were to add anything here, it would perhaps be more of a glow. And so to do that, you're going to go to layer style and add an outer glow, and that can help just allow your title to pop off the page a little bit. And it's very white. I could go in there and I could add a bit of that yellow color, and that's just going to allow it to blend a little bit better. And then I always add a drop shadow layer style to these wooden elements. You can go to layer style, drop shadow, and that's going to add some realism. There's a little bit too much shadow there, so I'm going to bring the distance down to maybe 7, and then the same with the size. And so now you can see it's more of a realistic approach. And then also too, you have the option to embellish. 2 different options with this collection. You can go to the ArtPlay palette and you can create custom embellishments. So I do have a series of classes that shows you how to create your own element clusters, but these are the embellishments that come with the ArtPlay palette. So the elements in the folders are essentially delivered in PSD and PNG format. So those are for those people that aren't working in Elements or Photoshop and need to layer up their own designs. See, I just dragged in one of them and we'll see how it goes. So maybe we can add this into the mix like this. That actually works really well, except for it does impinge on my title a little bit. So this is where it's always a bit of a work in progress, and you might have to move things around a little bit. So Made for Journeys, and then maybe we just nudge this over a little bit. But I quite like how that worked out. Let's go ahead and cancel that. And then I feel like we need a bit more color. So I'm going to place my cursor at the top of my layers panel and go and see what we can find in the way of some color. So we've got this yellow button, which would be fun. And then maybe add a couple of these word labels. So I'm going to drag those directly onto my canvas here. And I'm going to click on the check mark at the top of my screen in Photoshop. That will be on the bounding box of the element if you're working in Photoshop Elements. And then I actually have some styles. I like to save a bunch of styles to my styles panel. It saves me a lot of time. This way I can select 2 elements that are the same and apply the same style at the same time. So I'm just going to drag these down here, maybe add them at the bottom. You could rotate them slightly if you want to, just to give them a little bit of interest. And then we've got this fun button here, which might be fun over here. And then I've got a bigger shadow for that. So maybe I'll go with something that's got a bit of a larger shadow, so it gives it more dimension. And I wonder what else we've got. Maybe we've got a little bit more. My advice with elements is to keep adding until it looks like it's too much, and then at that point turn off a couple of layers and stop, is sort of the way I roll with elements. This rope is kind of fun, so add that into the mix maybe. You can change the size of elements a little bit if you want to. And then we also have elements from the multimedia elements. So these multimedia documents, they also coordinate with the different papers. So like this one, for example. So you can open up these ones too, and you can drag them onto your layout design and use them in their entirety, or you can just use different pieces of them. So in this case, I'm just going to borrow this piece of stitching and just add it to my little cluster here. And then that would be good. I'd go in and I'd add my journaling. I'd obviously write a little bit about the hike that we went on, and perhaps add the date, and just maybe add some of the little anecdotes. The other thing that we can do here too with the photo blends is that we can actually change the color of some of these layers. So if I go back down to our photo blends, you can see we've got the mask, but we've got all of these other layers too. So we have the choice here. We can turn off some of those layers if we want to. We can go ahead and we can move some of those layers. So maybe I want to move this hipster plume layer ever so slightly, and maybe I want to resize it. And then maybe I also want to recolor it by going to Edit Fill, ensure that Preserve Transparency box is checked, go to your color option, and then maybe select a color from your design. Now it's coming up a bit green here, whereas it looks more blue. So you might have to sort of move your cursor around to get a color that is desirable, and then you can add it in like that. And if you don't like the color, you can always go up to your levels and you can make that color darker or lighter. You can also go up to your hue and saturation, and you can change the hue of that as well. You can also desaturate it slightly. So lots of different options there. So I would probably change the color of some of these other layers. This is a pretty fun layer here. So maybe we go with Fill, and then I found that that color wasn't quite dark enough. So maybe we select a bit further down in order to select a darker color. And then you can also change the blending mode too. So you can change it to the color burn or a linear burn. You can try overlay, that sort of disappears. Screen is interesting because you get, or color dodge, you get it in white. But linear burn or multiply are often good approaches for that. And again, you can play around with the different tools, maybe try curves, and notice how it gets lighter and perhaps darker. There's a nice texture layer here that I think I'm also going to recolor. And then maybe add a color burn blending mode or even linear burn like that. You can change the opacity. So lots of different ways that you can manipulate those layers. And then you can see that I've created this wonderful cluster here, but in doing that, we've lost this element here. So maybe you want to play around and experiment with the placement of that. It really depends on how much journaling you have. Obviously that encroaches on the journaling box, but if you don't have as much journaling, maybe you want to remove that box and add the element here and just sort of move things around. So they're a really great starting point. The other thing you can do with templates too is you can actually start a layout and you can pull the pieces from one template onto your layout and build up the layout that way. So I'm going to go ahead and save this and add it here as our layout 1, because it's always good to save these sorts of things. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a custom layout next. Any questions about that? Anyone has any questions? Just let me know. I've got someone here asking me if I want to be famous. Not really. It never fails. We always have one, right? Okay, so I am going to close these files out and we'll work on our layout number 2. I'm going to create a new 12 by 12 layout at 300 DPI. And then I think this time we're going to use some of the brushes that I have created as companion sets. So if we go back to our digital art supplies, I know I showed this before, but we have these brushes here that I created of barns and sheds. They were sort of inspired by one of my customers in the AA Connect. And similarly, I was using these bird brushes and I thought it would be fun to create another set of those. So it might be good to create a layout without a photo. I'm often asked, how can you create artistry without using photos? So maybe we'll go that direction. So I'm going to start this time with an Artsy paper, soon as we started with a template last time. Any requests on the paper that you'd like me to use? Any of them would work. I kind of like this one, but I'm open to suggestions if you guys want to help me out here. Let's go ahead and just pull in. Usually I'll pull in maybe 2 or 3, so you can kind of pull them in. It's always a good idea when you're working with a new layout to actually create a new layout. That way you're not working directly onto the paper. Of course, these are JPEG files, and so they can be easily changed and saved over. And then this gives me the option to be able to kind of switch between the 3. if I want to do that. And I decided this time I wasn't going to use a photo, so I don't have to match my photo up with any of the papers. So once they're in place, let's go ahead and see which looks best. So I'm going to create a new layer, and then I am going to navigate to our brushes. So the ones I want to work with are the barns and sheds. So these are delivered in PNG format. So this means that I can simply drag any of these onto my layout design. So I'm going to maybe just grab a couple. I'm holding down the Command key or the Control key or the Command key if you're on a Mac, and I'm going to drag those directly onto my layout design. And they're just going to kind of sit there like that. So I can kind of switch between a couple of them if I want to. Your other option here is to go to your Windows and open your brushes panel. And if I go ahead and I drag the brushes file, in this case there are 2 brushes files, and what this means is that these are compatible with different versions of Photoshop. So I believe it was Photoshop Elements 15. They decided that you could have brushes larger than 2500 pixels. The same with Photoshop when we became Creative Cloud, then they doubled the size of the brushes. So when you see 2 different brush sets, usually it means that the larger one is for the newer versions of Photoshop, but I still have customers who are working in the older versions, and so I want to make sure that they're taken care of too. So in order to load those, I like to just drag this ABR file and I just kind of drop it into my brushes panel. So now when I scroll down to the bottom of the brushes panel, you can see that my brushes appear in this area. And so this allows me to create then a new layer in my layers panel, select the paintbrush tool from the tools panel, and then select a color. So maybe I want to go with like a brown color, and then choose a brush. So we have a bunch of them, so I'll add this one in like that. Okay, so we have like 3 different brushes. So this one doesn't match with this paper, but it could match with this one. So again, it's a kind of sort of a process of elimination to find which fits. I kind of like that. That would work really well. And then we have this one that also works really well. I like how the roof sort of aligns with the area in the sky. We could change the size of it just ever so slightly so that this portion sits within the area of the design. We can move it around like that. So that works. And then this one also works too. So lots of different options here. I like how the artistry sort of fills the design here. And I could go on experimenting too. I could turn this one off. This one also works. This one I put in brown. I could go ahead and apply a linear blending mode, or I could apply a color burn blending mode. That's going to change the look of that brush. But this, of course, becomes a sort of a focal point. So I think I'm going to go with this this time. And then we can add some brushes in the same way. So instead of dragging the image on there, like I did with these brushes, I'm just going to drag it on because I can show you then how to recolor those elements. So the Take Flight brushes are very much the same. There's 2 different brushes, brush files, and then you have the images. Incidentally, you can also, if you manage to save over these ABR brushes, then you can create new ones from the PNG files. So you just have to use the define brush set command in Photoshop and Photoshop Elements, and I have a free class on my website at Anna Aspinus Designs that shows you how to do that. So I'm going to take, I kind of like these ducks because I feel like the shed is sort of on a farm. So I'm going to add these guys up to here and then maybe sort of rotate them slightly. And then if you want to recolor these, it's a question of just going to Edit Fill, ensuring you have that Preserve Transparency box checked, going to your color option. You can sample a color from your layout design. So if I wanted to go with this color, for example, and click OK, then it's going to change the color, and then you can add a blending mode. So multiply, linear burn is always a favorite of mine. I really like the color of that and how it sort of brings out the yellows and the browns in like this. And maybe I want to just change the opacity of that, or maybe not change the opacity, but maybe go and change the levels just to make that a little bit lighter. So we're building up sort of a nice composition here. Usually when I've added in my focal point, be it a photo or some sort of design, then I like to add in the words. That's the next kind of stop. So let's go back to our words, and in this case I'm going to go into our bonus ArtPlay collection. So like take a look at some of the elements there. We've got some really cool brushes. I'm going to add those into my panel, so I've got them handy by just dragging them in. Now you can see we have those added at the bottom there, so I can use those with my paintbrush tool. I might use those to mitigate this line that's running through our focal point here. And then we have a really fun element. Let's go ahead and drag this element in and just see if it might work with what we're doing here. I kind of like the little tree element in there. So you can select all the layers. I'm going to make sure I have the last layer in my layers panel selected, and then I'm going to drag this in and maybe just place it, and that actually works remarkably well like that. What I might want to do is just change the size a little bit. I might want to rotate it a little bit. I really love how this paper texture sort of hugs the our little shed that we've added to our design here, our focal point. And it might be that you want to resize those layers individually. Maybe we bring the tree a little bit further up, kind of like him there. And maybe the same with the shadow and the urban threads. So you can move these pieces around independently to make them work for you. So I quite like that. Typically I don't bring in the elements first like that. The other thing I love about these layered elements is it allows you to play around with the color and the intensity of the drop shadows on these elements. So you can make them a little bit darker if you want to. You can go to edit and fill, and then maybe you could change the color. So if you want something other than gray or black, you can maybe try this blue, for example. And so now you can see how that makes it more blue. You can duplicate the shadow layer to make it more intense. You can also go to your hue and saturation, and you can adjust the color that way. So lots of ways that you can manipulate the different shadows on your elements. And then I'm going to, let's go ahead and kind of got distracted. I was going to add words, but this is kind of the way it goes when you're creating on the fly. You just sort of get pulled into one direction. But it works. It works just fine. I think I might also just take this paper texture and maybe play around with making it a little bit smaller. So maybe we'll do that. Now I'm going to go back to our Ambages. So we have this layout ideas. So you have all of these different layout ideas that I've put together for you. And then you have this bonus papery, which is kind of fun. I really love the yellow in that. And then we get to our word art. So this is what I was looking for. So walk your own path, these moments in time, or follow your soul. So let's walk your own path, and then I'm going to do time. And so I'm going to add these into my layout design. And of course, because I wasn't cognizant of where I had my cursor placed, it's deposited those elements within my group of multimedia elements. So I'm just going to name that MM for multimedia, and then move those elements at the top here, and I can group those into words. So it can sometimes help keep track of your layers. And then we'll go and we'll add a drop shadow layer style. I managed to add it to the actual title layer instead of the wooden layer, and it's a little tricky to get hold of it. So now I'm going to play around with placement. So when I'm looking for placement, I'm looking for areas of white space that I could potentially place this. I'm going to turn off that drop shadow layer style. And I really like these lines here. So I'm going to try and make my title align with the lines in this paper texture like that. And then we got to see if we can get this time to fit in the same way as well. So maybe we pull this up here like this. We're going to have to drag it below though. Maybe bring it below the multimedia elements. And then so this is where we have to actually find the area, the best fit for it within that group of elements. So I kind of want it in between like that. And then I'm going to add the drop shadow to that. So I like how the time comes in. And then I talked about using those brushes to get rid of this element here. So there's a couple of ways that you can fill in this brush. You can kind of paint in there if you wanted to. So if I go to the layer that's just above my paper layer, I can go and I can select a brush. So we've got lots of different brushes in here. So maybe this one I'll start with and see how it goes. I love just experimenting with these brushes. So you can actually paint in there if you wanted to. You can change the color again by going to your hue and saturation. You can make that brushwork lighter. You can change the color of it if you want to. There's a green hue, a pink hue, a yellow hue would be kind of fun, slightly off. Like that. You can also apply blending modes, but of course if you apply blending modes, you're going to end up kind of seeing that paper texture again. So in this case, I'm going to keep it like that. And then you can also add texture too by using some of these textural brushes. So there's this lace brush that I can experiment with. You always want to create new layers when you're working with brushwork. So here's my blue pink layer, and then this is the new layer on top, and I'm adding this in white. And maybe I want to add a drop shadow to that. So I'm going to go to drop shadow, and that's going to give it a little bit of texture and bring that down just so that we get a little bit of texture, but it's not overwhelming like it was right at the beginning there. And I can move this around. I kind of like that there. And then create a new layer, and maybe there's another brush here, which is kind of fun. So maybe we'll do this in the same sort of color brown, select a brown from our layout design, create a new layer, and then maybe add that in like that. Adds a bit of texture. So I like to see that there. Now the only thing I noticed here is that we've got a duplication, so the same sort of lace texture here. So I maybe want to make that a little bit different by rotating it round, maybe moving it into a different place so we don't have the same kind of repetition. And I'm not really loving the way that that's looking. So basically I have to decide, do I want the white lace in here or do I want the lace out here? I think I'm going to go with the lace out here because I want to show you one more technique that you can use to fill this house here. If I now go and select the, where are we? I like to keep my Artsy Transfers and my ArtssyKardz with my ArtPlay palette. That's fairly new for me, but it's something that I find is quite useful when I'm working in collections. And I'm going to go and let's see what we have here. I'm just going to open up this one randomly. This is an Artsy Transfer. So what you can do is you can actually use pieces of your Artsy Transfer to fill your design. And there is a bit of experimentation involved in this. I probably don't need any more paper textures because we've got quite a lot of texture going on within the element. But we've got this lace here. This provides a different type of lace to what we've already got in our design. So that could work quite well. And again, you could play around with applying blending modes so that it just imparts the texture, or you might want to see more of the actual element. I think in this case, I like the actual element. And then usually when I finish using them, I turn them off. There's this little green transfer here, so maybe I'll bring that in. And you can layer these up and rotate them around. Kind of, that looks like a kind of a green tree there. I like that in there. And if you don't like any part of the transfer, like I like all of this that's going on up here, but I don't like this line at the bottom here, you can just take your eraser tool and just gently remove that part of the element. And then maybe I like this transfer, but I feel like it's too big. So I'm going to leave that one alone and maybe go with, I saw there's a splatter in here. I see a splatter. Where is this splatter? I want to see if I can grab it. So I've got the move tool selected and I'm using the auto select, and this is allowing me to select the elements directly on the transfer. So I like how that aligns with our design, but I don't like the placement of it. So I'm going to drag it up to the top of the layers panel. See what it looks like on top here. And you can play around with maybe bringing it down and just seeing where the best fit might be for it. So I kind of like it there so that the texture kind of goes over the top of it, but it's not underneath. And ideally I'd like to have this piece here and this piece there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just split that element into 2 layers by selecting it and going to cut, edit, paste, and then moving this piece independently down here like that. And you can also play around with the opacity. You can play around with the different blending modes. It's probably not going to make too much of an effect because it's white. Typically blending modes don't work very well on white or black. I'm going to close this out. And then I kind of want something kind of like a sun here. I wonder if we have anything. I don't think I included any photo glows with this particular collection, but I am going to quickly just look through and see. I wonder if this would maybe work. Drag this in like this. And there's this gold paint which could come up here. I don't know. Maybe decrease the saturation of it or the opacity of it. Play around with the blending modes. And then if all else fails, another great way to go and get the pieces that you're looking for is to go into your stash. So if I go into my digital art supplies and I maybe go, I think with Alfresco I did have some photo glow elements, and so yes I did here. So I can borrow elements from other collections and then bring them into my layout design. So I could add that over the top and maybe play around with the different blending modes, hard light, and I can reduce the opacity, and that's just going to add just a little bit of shine to my layout design. So I think I'm going to call that one good. I've showed you a couple of techniques there on how to use the brushes, different ways to colorize. Let me know if you have any questions about that. There's not much happening in the chat box, so other than people want me to be famous. So if you do have any questions, then let me know. I'd love to answer them for you. I'm going to go ahead and save this as layout 2. And then we'll create a custom layout next. So I'm going to go ahead and close this, create a new layout. I'm going to use a 12 by 12 by 300 DPI. And then this time I'm going to go to my ArtPlay palette. So let's head back to ArtPlay palette Ambages. And I'm going to look for my papery. So, and I'm going to do something a little bit different this time, I think. Kind of want to try something new. So I'm going to select 2 of these papers. Maybe we'll go with these 2. Drag them into my workspace. I was in the AA Connect yesterday and I was really inspired by some of Diane Weber's work. The way she incorporated line with her blended elements, and so I thought it might be fun to maybe try that. So I'm going to create a solid background. I have no idea if this is going to work, but we'll find out, won't we? So I have 2 different papers and I've created this sort of harsh line here, and if I wanted to I could go ahead and I could add a drop shadow layer style, and that's going to add a bit of texture, maybe add a bit greater shadow. There we go, that's much better. So we've got sort of a traditional sort of start to our layout here, and maybe I'm going to go and select, let's take a look at what we have in the multimedia documents. So I like to look at the preview to see what I might want to use, and then once I've looked at the preview, then I go and try and locate what it is I want to use. So there's this one might be fun. Let's add this in. And then it's sort of on a landscape orientation, this, but I think what I want to try and do is pull it in like this and then go to edit, transform, and then rotate it by 90 degrees. So this allows me then to maybe cover up some of that hard edge if I want to. I can also play around with this idea of placing some of these layers behind that hard edge as well. So I can have that like that. And ideally I want to have it with the drop shadow. So I'm just going to undo that a couple of times, grab that, and then just drag it down the bottom here and have that like that. And then maybe close that out. Let's see what else we've got. Not that one. I wanted to go into number 3. This was the other piece I think I wanted to use. So I can bring this one open, and then maybe we play around with some of these layers. So I just want the paper layers. So I'm going to leave the rest of these layers alone and just select the paper layers. Drag these in. And maybe drag these above. Let's drag them on top. And we can play around with the placement. So now once I've got them in sort of a rough estimate of a place, then I can start moving these around maybe and seeing how I can get them to fit. So maybe I'm going to have that like that. And this one here. What I could do is I could clip this paper texture to the blue texture. So go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask. I can do that if I want to. I can also drag it down below and have it like that. I can rotate it slightly. I think that's the way that I want to go with that. And then we've just got this hard edge here, which I could leave if I wanted to. But I think what I want to do, because I've sort of masked up all the other parts of the hard edge, then I'm going to select the layer, the paper layer, the blue paper layer, and then I want to look for a straight. Here we go. This is what I'm looking for. This piece of like this, and just drag this directly on. So maybe I can add that like that, and that's going to mask the edge a little bit. It's kind of fun. The other thing I can do, I just saw too, this is fun too. So these two pieces of lace here, if you're working in a program that's not Photoshop or Elements, the way to use these is to literally place the shadow layer below the element layer, and then you can use either your mouse to scooch that element down, that shadow down, or you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to get the variation that you want. And so I've managed to grab the wrong layers there. There we go. Grab these layers. So maybe I want to play around with adding in some of this lace too. Add it in like that. So that's kind of fun. And then I think I want to change the orientation of that grass. So we'll rotate that round just a little bit. Maybe go ahead and flip it, edit, transform and flip on a horizontal axis and have it like that. So just a different way to create a different kind of look. And then we can use either transfers or overlays, or just bring in. So typically I would create a foundation on a solid background. You've seen me do that so many times. This time I'm going to do it the other way around. I'm going to go and select a Photo Blends clipping mask. So let's go ahead and grab, where are they? I've lost them. Here we go. Like this. And I know I had sort of a portrait style one. This one. So I'm going to drag this into my workspace. You don't want to drag this directly onto your canvas because you want to retain all the layers. So I'm going to open it and then select all those layers by holding down the Shift button on my keyboard. Drag this over and then maybe add this in like this. You could play around with rotating it if you wanted to. Maybe I want to rotate it a little bit. And then I need to find a picture that's going to go in here. Let's go ahead and group these layers. And I'm going to call it FB for Photo Blends. and then select the photo mask layer. Now if I go over to my images, I thought this was really funny actually. I wanted to just share this with you. So this was Luke. I don't know where he was going, some function he was going to, but we took him the following year to get pants. So bearing in mind this was 2 years ago, we took him last year to get pants for when he went to Boston to play lacrosse, and he put them on just a couple of weeks ago, and this is what it looks like now. So he's grown quite a bit in the last 2 years and changed quite a bit, so I thought that was kind of funny. Just wanted to share that little funny that I found. That's the joy of going back to old photos, is that you get to revisit those memories. Okay, so I'm going to use a picture of my mom. Wish she was sitting in my living room right now, that's for sure. I'm going to drag her into the mix here and then just kind of resize slightly and rotate slightly, and then go to layer clipping mask. So typically I would probably change the rotation and resize actually on the mask, but you can kind of estimate and do it before then. So the mask doesn't quite fit, but you can modify the mask. So I'm going to select that mask area. Let's go down to those brushes that we come in the bonus set. There's some really fun little blending brushes here, and I'm just going to paint directly onto the canvas and maybe change around the different brushes. So add in like that. If you overstep, it's not such a big deal. You just go in and you just remove whatever it is that you've added that you didn't want to add. Maybe I will let's go back to our brush here and add this one. This one goes in quite nicely there. I like the texture that's added there, so I'm going to keep that in. And then you can play around with those other layers. So we've got an art stroke here and a stain. So maybe we can lighten the stain by going to the opacity, or you can go to edit fill and you can go with the blue. But I would wait on starting to change all of these layers until you've added in the artistry around the edge, because it might be that we can get rid of some of these layers and you may save yourself some time. So I'm going to go back to that background layer and I'm going to look for an Artsy Transfer. So let's go into our Artsy Transfers. And I wonder if this one will be good, or let's go with this one. So I'm going to drag it into the background again because I want to retain all of those layers. I'm going to select all of the layers in the layers panel, and then I'm going to drag them across like this and just add that behind there. And then from here I'm able to then sort of move these layers around if I want to. So maybe I want to bring this blue one up a little bit. Maybe I want to bring this one down, and that's going to make me bring this paper texture down a little bit. I don't want to bring it too close to the edge. I might want to change the color slightly and go to hue and saturation, and I can sort of desaturate that a little bit to tone down the yellow. And so see what I mean now with the picture of my mum, and we've got all of these stains. So we can now go back and see if we actually need all of these stains. So I think I'm going to get rid of that lace, and I think I can get rid of that. I don't think we need that. That one we might need. I like how it aligns with the staircase, but I might want to make it less obvious. So in order to do that, I need to lighten it and go to edit fill. Maybe we'll start with the blue. I never worry too much about the color. I wait till see what it looks like, and then at that point, then I start playing around with it. I'm kind of going to leave that one because I want to see what else we've got here. I like that one. I think that one's a keeper. We already looked at that one already, and then there's a couple at the top here. So we don't need that one, and I don't think we need that one either. So I'm just wondering what this, I think it's just part of the mask. So I think what I'm going to do, I kind of want that to be white. So this is going to be what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a new layer, go to layer, create clipping mask, and then with a brush. Let's use that one from the bonus and just go on there and just paint a little bit of white on top there, just to kind of tone that down. We can even do the same and add in there. And then we've got a lot of black here, my mum's shirt. So we can use that same shadow highlight to lighten that up a little bit. We can also go down and maybe add in some sort of texture in there. So I don't know if I like that necessarily. Let's try this one here. That's kind of fun. So just sort of adding in some visual interest into the design. This is always kind of the most time consuming part of layout design, is just the playing part. That's kind of fun. So I'll keep that. And then of course you have the brushes that come with the ArtPlay palette too. So if you need more brushes, head into the brush set. You can drag that into your workspace. And that's going to open up 16 more brushes for you to use. It doesn't want to open though. There we go. And you can increase the size of these brushes by increasing that lever down the bottom here. And then here maybe you can add in other elements as well. So that's kind of fun. The other thing that you can do too is you can play around with the blending mode and see if that yields anything. I kind of like that. We do lose a lot of her body there though. Lighten. So maybe with that, yeah, I don't know. I'm just going to keep it as is. I think I like it as is, because when we add the blending mode, we're going to end up losing a lot of the detail. What else can we add here? We need to add a title. I kind of feel like I want to add something else down at the bottom here. So let's add a new layer. Nope, not that. Maybe add this in. Nope, not that. So again, it's just playing around, adding these different elements. I like that. So that just tones down some of that black in there. And then I'm going to go and let's see what we have in the way of titles. This time we'll go back to our word art. So I'm going to navigate to our word art next. I'm going to use the beaded threads. And let's have stay a while. And now. So I'm going to drag these into our layout design. Let's see how these fit. Maybe add this up here and then add this down here or up here, either way. Maybe add it like that. Probably want to have the most dimensional element on top of the other title layer. And then this one, we could have it go across the bottom here, this way. You could also rotate it. I'm not sure that the sentiment though really goes with the page, so I think I'm going to go ahead and just remove that. And if I wanted to add more stitching, which I don't know if I do, I think I might bring this, see what the stitching looks like. See, I don't love that there either. So this would be probably where I would decide to, I think I'm going to add the stitching down here though. Like that. I think I prefer it there than up at the top there. So I'm going to add that there. And then, yeah, I think that's pretty much what I'm going to do with that. I don't think I need to add any more. I'm pretty happy with the way it goes. One of the things I could do instead of using the stitching, so what I was going to say is I can always go into a different collection. So if I want to, if I don't have what I need in this collection, I can go into the previous collection. I think it was Ikigai. And I can take a look. Multimedia Flowers usually has some stitching in it. So here's a piece of stitching here. No, wait, it's not a piece of stitching. I am lying. Here we go. Here's a piece of stitching. So I could use stitching from another collection. I don't know if I want to add more stitching at this point though, because I've already decided to add two pieces up the top there. I thought a fun way to add texture here would be to use the texture of the transfer. So if I go back down and find that, I've got myself in a bit of a pickle with all my layers, you see, because I wasn't paying attention. So these are all my multimedia documents. So let's type. This is where it does become helpful to have those kind of all together. This is my photo blends, and I know I dropped a bunch of stuff inside of there. So here's the Artsy Transfer. So I'm looking for the texture layer, which you can't really see. Not the texture layer, it's paper. This is the one I'm looking for, this paper layer. So what I could do is I could duplicate this layer. It's going to intensify it, but if I drag the copy above on top of my photo blends layer, then you can see that we now have that texture on top of our photo. And what I might do is just move this around and see if I can get a texture that sort of runs across that line there like that, and then just go in with a brush, whichever one you have available, and just kind of go in and just erase parts of that. And I'm going to call that good. And that is my 3 layouts for the day. So hopefully that gives you some ideas on how to use some of the new collections. The other thing that you could do too, I was just thinking about this, piecing together the different papers. And again, I was inspired by Diane to play with this a little bit more. I don't want to go there. Whoops. Really not. Go back to our Embage release. And this time I'm going to select a solid paper. Which one haven't we? Haven't used this one yet. So I'm going to drag this one in. Nice textured piece of paper. And then you could do a similar sort of scenario with the ArtssyKardz. So if you go into the ArtssyKardz, I like to pull them out here so that I can see them all. But it could be that you want to select a couple of these. So just a variety I've selected, it looks like 6. I'm going to drop these onto my layout design. And then maybe add drop shadows to those. It's a bit dark. Some lighter ones maybe. Might have to make a custom shadow for this. All right, let's do a custom shadow. So in order to do a custom shadow, I'm going to add the shadow. I'm going to go up here and bring this down a little bit. Let's go to 120, change this to 5, and then create a new style. So hopefully now when I select all of these layers and I go to the bottom of my panel, that is down there. And that's a lighter version. So now I could do the same thing as I did with the paper, but this time sort of create a foundation this way. And then turn off the layers that you don't want to use. So maybe turn off this one. Have it like that. That's the way I'm going to have it. And then play around with placing the transfers on top. So if I go now to my ArtPlay palette and go into the Artsy Transfers, then I can start playing around with this idea of layering these transfers on top of the design or even on the sides of the design. So maybe add that one there. So I'm just playing right now and just kind of seeing, and this is how, you know, you get cool results, as when you start playing around with different ideas. So I could add this in like this. And as I'm starting to add stuff, then maybe I decide I want to remove one of these cards like that. And you could then bring in some of the stitching as well. So, or even some of the lace. You can bring in the lace like this. Play around with the different rotations, maybe add a drop shadow to that. Probably want to soften that by increasing the size, maybe bring down the opacity. And then you could go over to the, I don't know, multimedia documents. Let's do those. And bring in, I'm going to bring this one in again. But instead of bringing the whole thing in this time, I'm just going to bring in pieces. So maybe we add this piece in like this. And we can rotate it. Like that. I don't know. I like it there, but I don't know if it's going to work because we obviously want to maybe add a photo in here. Could also play around with the blending modes. That would be fun too. See if we can get a cool nope, I think I want to keep that as normal. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to add there. So I guess if we added in either another transfer, let's go and getting carried away now. See, I'm into it. I can add in my photo blends. Let's do that. See which one I want to use this time. We used that one already. Let's try this one. So I can add this in like this. See, and then it covers up some of that ArtsyKardz at the top here, almost to the point where maybe we need to get rid of it. I don't know. The other option here, of course, is that I was just using the JPEG versions of the ArtsyKardz. So what might be fun here, I'm just going to close some of these layers out. I think I saved this one. I can go in and I can go back to my ArtsyKardz. Where are they? Here. And then go into here. I think this was the one I was using. And so when I open up the PSD version of it, then I can just select the transfer layers from that. So I can have it like this. Whoops, I've managed to drop that. I'm going to do that again. So I can move it in like this, and then I can start playing around with maybe rotating this like that. So that's kind of a fun way to do this. And then bring this in like that, and that works quite well, I think. I like that there. The only thing I don't like is that harsh line there, so I can just go and I can erase that out a little bit. And then I can go in and I can add my photo. And maybe now bring this out a little bit. Oh, that's going to mess up my thing though. So maybe we make this smaller. It's like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. Oh, there we go. Now I see a little bit more of that artistry in the background. Oh, it doesn't want me to grab that transfer. There we go. We can add that like that. And I like the lines in that, so I'm going to keep those lines. And then we can just add a photo. So let's go grab a photo real fast just to finish this up. This is Frisco, so let's add this in. I think it should fit. We can add that in like that. We can resize the layer. And because we've got all this nice brushwork around the edges, you see it contains the image really well. Or I really wish that it was like maybe a bit narrower though. So I might just play with just the mask part and make that a little bit narrower. There we go. But then we still have the containment of the outside. And then here we can play around with the placement of this. Change the color if we want to. Maybe change the blending mode. Do the same with this one here. like that. And then we can just add in our title. So let's do that real fast. Go and grab our word art. Oh, I didn't use these ones. We really love this land. That is quite apt. So can add this down at the bottom here. This will go perfectly underneath this, or actually on this little card at the bottom. If I zoom out, you can see that a little bit better. There we go. Let's drag that up. And then let's see what we've got. Feels right. Happiness is the path. Here and now. Let's do here. I think, did I use here and now already? I don't think so. Here and now, and then road. Let's add these two in the mix at the top here. So what I like about these straight lines is they provide really good indication of where to place my titles. So sort of ledges for my titles. I don't know if I like that little piece there, so maybe we'll turn that guy off. That's probably better. There we go. And then add this here. And I think I'm going to call that good. I might want to add some more embellishments though, probably, I guess. I've become such a, I didn't used to be, but I've become such a dimensional embellishment person. So let's go back to our multimedia documents. We'll go with a different one this time. We looked at that one already. This one might be fun. Let's drag this one in. And we'll use this twig shadow from here. Maybe we'll use the urban threads too. So I'll grab all three of those elements and then maybe drag this up to the top so it sits on top. And that works quite well. And then I almost feel like I need something yellow there too. So this is fun, this doily. Let's see if we can fit that into the mix. Drag that down to the bottom. Whoops. So it's probably a little bit too far down. Drag it up until, I think this is from the photo blend, so I'm just going to remove it if I can get hold of it. There we go, that texture like that. And then maybe I can move this back down. Oh, it's hidden under there now. There we go, like that. So maybe I bring this down here like that. I like how that mirrors with the mountains and these at the top here. So I'm just kind of adding in bits and pieces, but I really want a yellow button. So, and I think we have a yellow button in the ArtPlay palette. I've already used it, but that's okay. I'm not opposed to reusing elements. So I'm going to drag this guy in and just add him to my layout as the finishing touch. Make sure that we can see him by dragging him to the top of the layers panel. And add that like that. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. So we got 4 layouts in today, mainly because my interest was piqued by playing with those ArtsyKardz and making a similar sort of background. Let me know if you have any questions. Oh, there's lots of questions. I was so busy creating that I was not paying attention. So let's see. We've got one of these days I'll get this forum figured out. Love this collection. Thank you. Liz says, I love what you create. And then I am Joan K says, long day of work. I'm tired, but still enjoying the Twitch session. I'm always in awe of the way you work so smoothly. Thank you so much. I've had a lot of practice, almost 20 years. So I should know what I'm doing at this point. Liz says, I love that effect with the split background. And then I am Joan K says, I've rarely used a split background. Love using an element cluster to bridge the two background layers. Yep, it's a great way to create, you know, a two-tone background for sure. And I wish I'd taken a screenshot when you were looking for elements. You were posed just like your mum. That's funny. Yeah, probably people say I'm a lot like my mum. And then I am Joe K says, wow, I typically take longer to do one layout than your three. And then Kay says, really like the split page with your mum. The straight angle at the bottom of the photo works in nice juxtaposition to the vertical of the split page, like colors in contrast to the black and white photo too. Awesome. Well, this collection will be available through next week. Next week I'm coming up with a new collection. So if you have anything that you have in mind that you want me to create, let me know. Shoot me an email or post in the Facebook group. I am probably going to do something maybe fallish. I keep hoping fall might arrive here. It's still pretty hot. But gives you some ideas on how to use this collection. I hope you enjoy it. I am hoping that it recorded. Thankfully, we did not crash, at least not yet. So I should be able to salvage a recording of this and get it up for you, hopefully later today. We'll see how it goes. It's 3:30 here, so I should have a bit more time to work today. And if anything comes up, if you have any questions about this, then just email me. And if you want to see more of me creating layouts, or maybe not creating layouts, but if you want to see or hear more of my approach to creating layouts and my opinions about layouts and just general inspiration, then go check out the replay of the AA Connect session that we did on Monday. That is now posted and it's awesome. Even every time I think there's no way we can keep doing these because there's nothing left to learn, but we keep learning something new. So it's pretty great. Kay says, thanks, Anna. Aren't the evenings starting to cool? They are starting to cool. It's actually comfortable now to take Rocky out in the morning for a walk. I think it was around, I don't know, mid to late 50s this morning. So yeah. And Roseanne says, I hope you feel better. I'm pretty good. I mean, it's just all the sitting I do designing. As I'm getting older, it's just not good. It causes my muscles to tighten up, and then I get pain in my lower back. So yeah. All right then. Well, I'm going to head on out here, and I will be in touch again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.